One frequently asked question is, what happens if the will or the trust is ambiguous, or if there are provisions that are lacking? Surprisingly, this does happen on occasion. Many times it might be with, someone had forgotten to put something in, somebody didn't reread it right, or something of that nature. Or they didn't anticipate that the person was going to own that particular type of asset. So if that is the case, you have to file a suit asking for the court to construe that document and determine what it actually means. In that event, the court will determine what was missing, if anything. But it has to be that the language of that trust or that will, if anyone reads it, it's going to be determined to be ambiguous, that there's no way that it could be determined that a person really meant what was in there. So these are all things that a court would have to determine, and each side would file their own briefs to determine and espouse their position for the court to review, and then the court makes a determination. One question that people ask is, how do I find a good attorney to represent me in a probate or trust dispute? The answer to that is really experience. How many years have they practiced in that area? How many estate disputes have they had? How long have they been in practicing in this area? These are all, great questions to ask. But I think the biggest thing is you have to have a real rapport with your attorney. Your attorney has to keep you involved and make you part of the process. And if you do find that type of attorney, which we believe we are at Gurok Law Firm, I think you'll be well served in this area of the law. Another area that we handle at Gurok Law Firm is in the area of business disputes. Sometimes we are asked a question like this: well, if I own 50% of the business, do I have the same power as my partner who owns the other 50% of the business? In mathematical terms, you should have, but a 50-50 type of a situation is just asking for trouble, in my view. That 50% person that's not you may decide that they want to take more than 50% of the money out. And if they have full rights to do so, and you don't have a shareholder agreement or an LLC operating agreement, they may have the ability to do that. They may have the ability to bind the business to something other than what it should. They may be a partner that doesn't do anything and allows you to do everything. So, those type of partnerships, or, even if it's a corporation, you each own 50%, are difficult to navigate if the parties are not the right parties. Sometimes people ask me this, what if my partner and I cannot agree on anything? At the front end of the business, when there are no problems, is the time to sit down and put together that exit strategy that you can incorporate in your shareholder agreement. Without that, you may be in a deadlock situation, and you have to check with state law to determine what happens in that event in a deadlock situation, whether the courts will cause you to liquidate the company and how the assets are going to be distributed net of the liabilities of the company. This happens more frequently too. It's like a business divorce, I would call it. And that's something that is very costly without having planned for this in advance. Sometimes I'm asked, if my partner and I cannot get along, can I take a portion of the business and go start my own business or go to work for the competition? This is a very touchy part of practicing in this area. you cannot, as a partner in this business, if you are also an officer of the business, you cannot go and compete against basically yourself. And so if you're in this situation, you have to find a way of getting yourself out of being an officer. Maybe you resign as being an officer, you know, maybe you are going into a business that is not in competition until this is all sorted out. But again, just like I have said in a previous video, it's important for you to think these things through up front. It's kind of like a prenuptial for a business. You have to come up with what are your options in the event that you and your partner can't agree. You want to go your separate ways. How would you divide up the business? At the front end of the business, you don't want to talk about that. Usually you want to talk about marketing and going out and getting sales and growing the business and what am I going to need in order to make this business go. But the reality is, the most important things people forget are, you know, that just like in a regular divorce where we have, you know, probably 50% of people who get married get divorced, this also happens in, you know, a business dispute area. So you need to think about, you know, what those issues are and how you can, you know, handle those.